Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Opinion Machine, the show where we talk about all things gaming. My name is Killjoy, and today I want to talk about Stormgate Early Access, basically, and give some thoughts on its current state of this game. Now, before we get on to it, I know Stormgate's had a lot of feedback and a lot of backlash in some areas of this game. I will touch on some of those things, but this is not a video designed to just bash on a game in Early Access. However, if you're going to put a game out in Early Access, then people can only review the product that's in front of them. And there are things that I think are worth talking about. So I'll go over like some pros and cons and stuff of this game. But just to give an overall impression of Stormgate, it's, you know, an RTS game made by veterans of, you know, Blizzard originally, and probably other people from other places that they've hired on. And what we have here is a game that I can definitely say has a lot of potential and a lot of promise. And as time goes on, I think this game will end up being a fairly decent game. There are things here that show promise and ideas here that I like. However, I don't think the game is in an impeccable state in its current form, and there are reasons for that. So we'll go over all that. So let's talk about the game. There are 3 factions in this game, Vanguard being your human faction, and the Infernos, which are basically demons, and then the Celestials, which, to be honest, are basically like Protoss, like some kind of crazy alien race. That's kind of your standard thing. This game is very heavily inspired by StarCraft, with Warcraft elements to it, like that wears its influences on its sleeve. Now, I can't speak too much for any of these teams, really. I mean, I've played Vanguard the most. I've played Infernals and Celestials. I think they're different enough, and they seem to have interesting playstyles. There's a lot of units and things like that. They all act differently. Vanguard, pretty much, their whole thing is that they can build with multiple builders to build buildings fairly quickly. The Infernals use units to build. They have the Shroud stuff, which allows them to heal their units and quicker and things like that. And then the Celestials have a very different way of harvesting. Just quite a cool set of units, things like that. Like, they just seem very different. They all play kind of differently. The game knows what it is trying to be, it's trying to balance the co-op, the single player, and the 1v1, 2v2 kind of thing that is going on here. And basically every map you have your 2 minerals, well, technically 2 resources, technically 3 if you include population. And then you also have power if you're playing the Celestials. That's like an extra resource that you get from building certain buildings. But essentially you have what looks like a kind of a gold mine, and then this other kind of like rock-shaped material on the floor, and they act as basically your main resource, and then your secondary one for upgrades and higher tier units. The one thing I will say I kind of appreciate these guys doing is that they're trying to go for the QWERT sort of system, where if you hit Q, that'll bring up your buildings. You can place a building down, the nearest worker will go and build it. They're trying to streamline some of the harder elements from other RTS games. So you don't actually have to click on a unit and go and build a building or get it to do certain things, because you have it all at your palm of your hand. Using those shortcuts is really useful. It's very powerful. It brings up your buildings, your like sort of lower tiered units, some higher tiered units, and then the same again with upgrades and higher upgrades. So as long as those buildings and things are available, you can tap those buttons, it'll bring up what it is, and you can use the shortcuts for those or whatever. So there are changes like that. There's some smaller ones. It tells you the number of workers you need to do. Ethereum is the other upgrade. I think I want to say lithium, but it's not. The main resource, it looks like a gold mine, has a number above it which is 12. That is the optimum amount of people you need mining. Whereas the Ethereum, you can have as many as you want, but you will mine out that quicker. So it's good to have a slightly lower one for the most part if you just want to keep that field constantly chunking out resources. So in terms of like streamlining the resources and stuff, that's pretty good. I like that. I like the fact that they've gone for a more streamlined ability for people to build, have access to things. You don't have to hotkey any of your buildings essentially like you would in older games. If you've got 5 barracks and you bring up that menu where you can build things from said barracks, you can basically be like bum, there's 5 things, they're all going to build. So there's lots of really clever things like that are trying to help improve things, because they obviously want the scouting and the combat to be, you know, the main sort of the interaction between you and another player basically. On top of that, this game has creep camps, which is something I personally, I'll be honest right now, I don't like as a concept, but it's not going to go away. The idea here is that you have ones that give you vision, you have ones that give you health, some that give you increased movement, all these different ideas around the map so that you can get buffs that can help you engage. And every time you take out a camp, it lasts for a certain amount of time, then resets, and then gets harder. And so that, you know, you have to kind of pick and choose when to use them. So there's a lot of elements here that I think work quite well in terms of what the game is trying to do. I think this early access does a really good job of being like, here's the core gameplay that we want to get across. And in the 1v1 mode and whatnot, that makes sense. Like each team, I've played a little bit of 2 of them, and mainly Vanguard, and gone, okay, I think I understand what they're going for here. The other modes, the co-op mode is a 3-player co-op mode rather than a 2-player one in something like StarCraft. And it's very basic. There's a lot of things that would help to make the co-op mode better, but what they're going for here pretty much is exactly the same as StarCraft 2's co-op mode. There's nothing here that's really surprising. Most of the maps, unfortunately, are very much the same as missions from StarCraft 2, and I'm sure they will get better ones and more interesting ones time to go on, but I kind of like what they're going for co-op. You have different heroes. You actually get heroes in the co-op mode and in single player, and they have a big effect on the battles. And you can level them up, and they get more abilities, or gain extra upgrades, things like that. The actual maps are usually like stop some vehicles from getting to an area. There's one where you have to defend at night time and go and deal with zombies basically in the daytime. There is portals. There's these portals that pop up and you have to take them out and things like that. So like, I enjoy it. I've genuinely had a fun time playing it. And as for the single player, like I've played like the prologue missions, I think it's just free, and then maybe I've done the first one of the first sort of set from the Vanguard. And the single player missions seem fine. They seem like they've got extra heroes and more interesting mission types. So all in all, it's what they've got across the board in this early access is actually kind of fun, and it works. But I think it's everything else around this is what is causing a lot of the backlash online, and a lot of things that I'm personally looking at and going, okay, I can see why there needs to be some changes here, right? So if we say, hey, the campaign seems like it's decent, interesting levels, fine. Co-op seems good, needs a lot of work, but fine. And all 3 of the teams play very differently, which is good. So let's start with the art style. This is massive. This has been a big thing. People are on about the art style. I think, personally, the big thing I've noticed is that a lot of the units' designs, and this includes some of the buildings as well, but not to the same extent, a lot of the units' designs in the Vanguard, for example, if you pile them on top of each other, it's very hard to define what's what. Some units do stick out, like the Helicarrier, which is like the big final unit for the Vanguard. And the reason I'm talking about Vanguard specifically rather than the other teams is I've played them the most. I can kind of speak on this. The same issue does occur with the other teams, especially the Celestials, but we just stick with the Vanguard because it's like human technology, so it's kind of easy to sort of explain my points. But yeah, they have the Helicarrier, which is this final thing you get, which is big, chunky looking flying aircraft carrier thing, easy to tell the difference. Once you get a lot of the ground units together, it all kind of blends it together because there's no hard outlines on any of this art style. The colours can be quite flat as well. And I think, personally, I'd like to see maybe not a cel-shaded style, but thick black outlines around a lot of the units to really make it obvious as to what they are. Like, for example, if you're playing as the Vanguard, you've got the Scout, which is a little dog. Very obvious what it is. It's a dog, doesn't look like anything else. Right? And then the first main unit you get is the Lancer. Now, the Lancer is quite obvious that it's got a massive blade like lance over its shoulder. Even then, I think the unit could do with just some outlines around the edge of him or around the sword to kind of really make it so that at a quick glance you can see, oh yeah, it's a Lancer. Then you've got like the Exo and the medic thing, and like it all just kind of like, even against the background, they kind of blend in. So I think trying to differentiate the units to the background, I think would go a long way and make it very easy to see what your opponent's doing in terms of what unit composition they've got versus, and also what you are building, and being able to see your own units. There's like a support aircraft thing that the Vanguard get. It's just, I'll be honest, the design just kind of sucks on it. It's like it looks like a the top of an umbrella with a circle in the middle of it. It doesn't look that good in terms of design. Like, the design isn't very strong on some of the units, and the Celestials, I think, are probably the biggest offender. I think a lot of their stuff kind of looks flat, and I've noticed this throughout the game, is that these units aren't defined enough, or there might be a lot of detail, but it's not defined enough. I think it's one of the main units the Infernos have, which is like a two-headed like demon thing. Like, you can kind of tell what it is, but when you zoom on it, you realize there's a lot of detail here, but it's just like, it doesn't stand out against the background. Because you've got to look at the outline of these units and be like, oh, it's this, it's this, it's this. And I think that it would be really nice to see them really try and improve on some of the weaker designs, especially one of the Inferno designs, which is kind of based after an Overlord from StarCraft. It's a bloody abomination. It's awful. Like, I don't know why they thought that the design of that was good. It genuinely looks poor in comparison to a lot of the others. Like, a lot of the character models for the units are like decent, but there's a couple in here that just really don't look very good. But if you add like a differentiant to it, then you can actually like make it look fairly decent and be able to tell what it is. So yeah, a lot of the units themselves, if they were more defined, it'd be much easier to tell what unit is at a quick glance, and then be able to be like, yep, cool, I know what I'm doing with. And I do think some of them could use a redesign to make it a bit easier. I know that this is something that's being addressed by the devs, so I don't want to go too hard in it, because I think that's something that they're obviously acknowledging, that the graphical style does need a bit of work and a bit of oomph. So moving on from the art style and all the graphical stuff, something that I've really picked up on in this game is a lot of the voice lines for the units lack a lot of clarity, and there's too many references to StarCraft in this game, and I think because of that, this game feels like it's one thing to be inspired by the things that you obviously worked on in the past. It's another to kind of feel like, especially at this stage in development, feel very like, imitation, very much to the T. And the voice lines in StarCraft 1 and StarCraft 2 and in Warcraft it's when you click on a unit, it's very clear what they're saying. It's very clear that it's that unit you've clicked on. In this game, some units for the Vanguard, like the Helicarrier, very obvious, very easy to hear what they're saying, like the lines are decently recorded. But some of the accents and some of the voices in this for some of the other units, the Exo, the Medic, those two units, I find their voice lines very hard to tell what they're saying. They sound too quiet. They don't have a lot of clarity to them. The Hedgehog's another one. They've gone for this like American accent, but apart from when you move, when you can hear them saying like rolling and moving out and things like that, when you click on them for anything else, it's so hard to tell what they're saying. And I do think the voice line thing is something that really would go a long way to making this game have its own personality and character. And a lot of the voice lines for some of the other teams as well, it's very flat. Like, I don't know if stuff needs to be re-recorded, or they need different people to have a crack at them, or just, make that audio clarity so much easier to hear and tell, because as it stands, it's like the unit barks, one, aren't particularly that interesting, and two, it's just kind of hard to tell sometimes what they're saying. And that was something I picked up on very early on, and I know that this probably isn't the most important thing compared to like gameplay and things like that, but it's something that would go a long way. I honestly think it would bring out that character, bring out that personality of each individual unit. I mean, the Exo is pretty much just a Marine. If you click on it, it basically, in the original games of StarCraft and StarCraft 2, if you keep clicking on the Marine, one of the lines in there is like, how do I get out of this chicken shit outfit, basically, which I think is a reference to Alien. Or Aliens, I think. But the Exo has a similar thing where it's like, oh, if you keep clicking me, I'm going to shove your finger up your ass. Like, it's very much inspired by that. And I think they need to get away. I think they need to do away with all of the lines. Even the bobs, which are based on, like, they're similar to SCVs. One of the lines the SCV says in StarCraft 2 is in the rear with the gear. And these things say in the rear with the beer. And I get that it's a reference, but that they say there's too many lines. The bloody carrier unit that they have that carries troops, it's got pretty much a good chunk of the lines from StarCraft 1's transport unit. Like, it's just so on the nose, and it's so noticeable that I just think it's something that needs to be changed. Scrap some of those lines, give it their own lines, make it its own unit, define these units by their own things, Like, yes, have a couple of references, but have that in the lines you're not meant to hear. Don't have that in the move and attack lines. Have that in the lines when you keep clicking on a unit, which it happens in this game, and they say things that are really random. Do that there. That way, you know, oh, okay, I see your nod to different things. I think that's a lot better way of doing it, rather than making it right on the nose in terms of that. Even the bobs, like the bobs are fairly clear, but I think you could go back and do a lot of the lines with them. Just these unit barks and things like that just need to be, there needs to be a level of clarity that I just don't think all the units are at. I think some are definitely better than others, but not all of them are there. And I think that's, to me, this game needs to focus on the visual and audio quality. And I really think it would propel this game forward, and a lot more people would like it, because I do think the gameplay itself is actually pretty decent. Yeah, alright, compared to something like StarCraft, it's a bit slower time to kill, which I think is fine. Like, I'm fine with that. One change though, or one thing I think I noticed that I didn't really find impactful is the amount of upgrades that you have in this game for your units. So most units have maybe 1 or 2 upgrades. So if you go onto one of the buildings, you click the upgrade for the Lancer, like, okay, now it does an extra amount of damage when it gets hit. There's another upgrade underneath it. They all have different symbols, or do different things. I'm sure a lot of it is placeholder and it'll probably change. But I don't think like any of these upgrades are that impactful. This is the problem, is that I'm just getting upgrades, and I'm like, okay, maybe if I put 1,000 hours in, I'll probably understand what upgrades do what, and so on and so forth. But as a newcomer to this game, like in StarCraft 2, you have, so ignoring the upgrades that you get for like +1, +2 and all that, Stim Pack, let's look at that, classic upgrade from StarCraft. What does it do? Well, it causes your units to take a little bit of damage, and then they fire, I think it's like 25%, 50% faster. Right? Very good upgrade. Very, very good. Like, a Marine in StarCraft has has 2 upgrades. Combat Shield, which gives it more health, and then a Stim Pack. Most units in StarCraft 2, like on the Terran side, don't have more than 1 upgrade. So Stim applies to the Marauder, but the Marauder also, so Stim's weird because it applies to the Marauder and the Marine, and then they each have an individual upgrade, like, that gives a buff, right? Then you look at something like in StarCraft 2, we'll look at, let's say, the Cyclone in its current form. What's the upgrade it gets? A boost in movement speed. Or you have an upgrade for the Medevac, which is, it regenerates energy 100% faster. Like, each upgrade, for the most part, it's like, either that upgrade affects multiple units, or like there is like 1 upgrade or 2 upgrades maximum for a unit, but it's usually a choice. You can pick between which one you want, whereas in this game it's more like Age of Empires. They kind of stack, where you go, we get this upgrade now, and now I get this first upgrade, and then later on I can get the second upgrade. And I think maybe having them split so that you can choose what you want to get might be better, and I think maybe reducing the amount of upgrades. Like the Lancers, for example, they got 2 upgrades. I can't remember what they are off the top of my head, and this is the problem, as I've read it multiple times and I still couldn't tell you what it is. I think the Exo gets something that when it gets hit, it gets a boost in speed of like 25%. Okay, cool. So that's its upgrade. Either have an upgrade that affects multiple units and then they all have 1 other, or reduce those upgrades down so that it makes a big impact, so that it's not, you're not getting 2 free upgrades or whatever. It just feels like a lot at the moment, and I feel like it needs to really actually have an impact on the fights, whereas in the current state I just don't feel like it does. And I'm sure it does, and I'm sure it's my lack of experience of playing the game, but it just doesn't feel like it. There's no, or have a visual upgrade as well, maybe. So the Lancers get their first upgrade, maybe the Lance they carry glows or something, like something to show that you've got the upgrade, something to show an impact on the battlefield. And I think having a small minor visual upgrade would help both players with it and both players without it, so they can see. The co-op levels as well, like some of them take a long time in their current state on some of the harder difficulties. Maybe that's just part of it, but it's not a big problem. I think that they'll do a better job. They really need to add in some visual indicators, I think, into when things are going to spawn and stuff in the co-op, but it's not, the co-op will get there, and I think it will be alright. The biggest issue I think with the co-op right now is that leveling up. So if you're leveling up, say, one of the, or any of the heroes, getting experience from it can take a long time, longer than it probably should. I think it's maybe 1 match too many per level. I think they should go back and revisit that and rebalance it. And then the last thing I think this game really needs, the guys at Stormgate or Frost Giant really need to have a think about this, is the pricing of certain things. Now, in its current state, you can buy campaign. The campaigns are going to be bought. That's fine. I understand that. But I don't know what the pricing is of these campaign packs. So you buy like the first section, it's 3 missions. I'm really hoping that like I'm going to be able to buy a full campaign for maybe like 15 to 20 quid. Like, but I'm talking like 10 to 15 missions. If it's like, hey, I don't know the exact pricing. I haven't, because I already own it because I was lucky enough to get be gifted one of these. Is that these better be reasonably priced if you're going to charge 3 missions at a time. I don't like that idea. It's not really something that's ever been done. Like maybe they go, oh, this month you get 3 missions, next month you get another 3 missions. I think I'd rather just be like, here's 10 missions for £15 or £20. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I'm getting some significant gameplay. I'm getting cutscenes. I'm getting story. You can pay for what it looks like is going to happen. You're going to be able to pay for pets, which you can currently do that. It's going to be co-op heroes. It's going to be campaign parts. It's going to be probably cosmetic skins. It's going to be Fog of War stuff. It's all going to be there, but I'm just a little bit worried right now that it just feels a little scummy, them charging for a lot of this stuff in early access. The early access is now free to all by the time this recording goes up, so, you know, that's nice, but I think it just depends on what they do, and I think especially the campaign, it's like, that's okay if you're going to charge a reasonable amount for a reasonable amount of content. If it's like a couple quid for 3 levels, I'm like, fair enough. If it ends up being like £10 for 3 levels, I think that's a bit too much. But obviously that's something that we'll see as time goes on. But I think in its current state, the core gameplay is pretty good. The game definitely needs an improvement in the art style, improvement in the audio, and to get away from a lot of the StarCraft and Warcraft references and really make its own thing. I think that will go a long way making this game a lot better. But as it stands, I think it's a good game. I think that in about a year's time, because it's going to be a while yet, 6 months to a year's time, I think this game will be in a significantly better place. But right now, these guys need to do a lot of work. And they should also expect a lot of that feedback and criticism. They seem to be addressing a lot of it already, which is awesome. And I don't want to see the game fail. I want to see the game do really well. But I just can't help but be like, for an early access game, the core gameplay, lovely, great. Can't knock that. But yes, please go and change. Do something about the art, make it stand out, and also do something about the voice unit barks and things like that, because it needs some love. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching this video. As always, if you like the video, hit like. If you want to see more content on Stormgate, which I will be doing stuff, hit the subscribe button. Links for Facebook and Twitter will be down below in the description. And until next video, I will see you then.